In this episode today, we cover artificial intelligence and we cover the possibilities of how to work with AI in the creative work as director, animator, and sound designer. As an Emmy Award winning director whose work spans from Pixar and Disney to MoMA's permanent collection, and whose commercial work has reached global audiences through brands like Apple, Google, and Nike. As president of the ADC's 2024 Artificial Intelligence Jury and a current board member, our guest today stands at the crucial intersection of traditional craft and emerging technologies, asking the hard questions about creativity's future. Through her experimentation lab, House of Indovina, she's pioneering new forms of human AI collaboration, not just observing the transformation of our industry, but actively shaping it. Lauren Indovina and Pete go a long way back and have been working together on a project for Coinbase. Pete invited her to work on his movies in development at Leica, and I got introduced to her about 2 years ago during the Partisan Christmas party in LA, and ever since hear her name on a regular basis. This episode is about a woman I highly respect and who deserves stages and microphones to talk into. This is the trailblazing mind of animation superstar Lauren Indovina.
One day, it occurred to me that I was going to die. I realized that if my kid ever Googled me, he might not actually know what I was up to all those times I wasn't smushing his face into mine. This is my attempt to archive that activity. Not to brag, but to leave a trail. To show him, and maybe myself, that all the long hours, deadlines, and weird artistic obsessions might have been worth it. Or at least explainable. Here lies the news, awards, press, and public-facing side of a very private life. You want to make your work as accessible to people as possible. And it's like, again, anti-art, like anti-creativity, because as an artist, you're like, oh, I want to create this experience, online. I want to have a website where people click around. Like, I had a very pragmatic colleague that said to me, when I sent a version of my website to him for review, he said, "You're making me click more than twice."
Oh.
And I thought that was a really interesting thing, because even as you as a consumer, if someone's
But clicking more
Yeah.
than twice being a positive thing, right?
No, being a negative
Oh,
thing.
why?
That's why I try
Oh.
to put everything like so easy to access at any point. You just click one time and you're
Right.
there. Like,
Oh, I kind of read it that like, oh, you're making me want to click again, like a page turner. Like it's
It's just the nature of how we've almost destroyed the dopamine centers of the mind, is that people just expect.
I think it's also that like when it comes to work, and that's why we're doing a lot of guerrilla stuff, for example. It's like or it's just what people love and know.
It's amazing.
But if you were to choose like another piece of work that you like more, but it has no name to it, but it's just something that you as a person love, you still have to choose the gorillas, like the big name over the smaller name, just because people bite easier with that name.
Pete, no, sorry if I'm going to embarrass you, but the work that you did on it was so groundbreaking at the time that it was anything that is being trained on anything right now, like in terms of that specific style of animation, which hadn't been done before at that level, like that's like the original, like that's the OG, but it's hard to find. And it's hard to find simply because, again, big corporations like Apple created like very easy systems for artists to digitize their work.
Well, it's just it gets replaced, doesn't it, by the next thing, and it gets a little bit,
And it's like
it disappears into a shadow and stuff like that.
You have to then have your own archive of your work.
Yeah.
And you can then like have someone or yourself, like, just make sure that it's like.
I never recognized how important it was to do that. I always thought, and I still do, because for me, being an animator, your drawing is very disposable, right? The idea is that you shouldn't care too much about it. And really the end product is the thing that you care about, right? And I do like that, but I always have had this very disposable point of view that I'm just hopefully going to keep doing something else. But this reminds me of one of the questions that you had, though, Sophie, where we could maybe get into that, which had to do with
Chapter 1. What draws you to technology? what draws you so much to technology? Because you've started as a fine artist, right? And then you worked with technology, or how did that kind of happen?
Like came from a very traditional fine arts background. My dad was an artist. He was also an architect. And so off the bat, when you're an artist and an architect, you're very physically aware of like physical materials because there's, obviously like there's technical challenges within mediums, like whether you're working with even ceramics, like somebody at some point discovered if you heat clay to a certain temperature, it becomes very, very hard.
Mhm.
So there's always been technology in the arts. But what happened with me specifically as a child was that my dad was very much like immersed in both fields. And when you are sort of immersed in this fusion of both art and technology, at least for him, he was very attracted to science fiction because also like from a fantasy point of view, it's like this really exquisite sort of promise of the future. So he had an incredible library of just very, very specific science fiction like masterpieces. And um, in his mind, like that was going to be the future, right? But at the time, which was like the 80s and 90s, the stuff was just straight up science fiction.
Right.
Like the people working in the field, like Ray Kurzweil, he's one of the sort of grandfathers of AI. Jeffrey Hinton is considered the grandfather, but like they're all sort of granddads. But so Ray Kurzweil was a person who invented, I want to kind of just call it the Braille machine. He was trying to understand sort of the psychology between like how a blind person can see. And like that essentially created all these different patents that he like put into the world where like people who had handicaps could now be advanced by technologies. And so my dad was really interested in Rick Kurzweil, but Rick Kurzweil also had these like what seemed like fantastical ideas, one of them being the singularity, which is just this abstract kind of thought experiment concept that there's a place in technology because it's exponential that we don't know where we are, like we don't know where it goes anymore.
Right.
So if you think about how technology has existed through time, it's like a very flat line. And then around probably the 1960s, like it starts to kind of tick up and up and up and up around the Industrial Revolution. And then suddenly it just flattens out. And so that's what he calls the singularity. It's when we start seeing like transhumanism, where we've completely cured any sort of like aging or ailments. It's also where we have an incredible abundance because things are so cheap and free. And so my dad followed this trajectory. And then around 2005, I think Kurzweil came out with a book. Well, first he created a book called The Age of Intelligent Machines. And then he created a book called Singularity. And then he created one around 2005 called The Singularity is Near.
So the singularity, just so I get an idea, is that once technology has achieved all of the things that we dreamed it could achieve, it becomes like a flat line. There's nowhere else for it to go.
Yeah, like we have
Right.
no idea.
Right.
It could be, it's so beyond our wildest dreams. Like it could be the end of humanity. It could also be the understanding of the entire universe.
Right.
And so my dad like leaned optimistically about this stuff. And so does Ray Kurzweil. And their feelings is that we are going to hit like a level of transhumanism in our lifetimes now. And then once Ray Kurzweil was kind of coming up with all this really engaging it wasn't just him, it was a bunch of different guys, but they were coming up with like sort of these really interesting thought experiments. There were these other guys who were like a little younger, one of them being Demis Hassabis and another being Mustafa Suleiman and Ilya Sutskever and Jeffrey Hinton. And they started coming out with like trying to understand if they can create essentially these like computer models that could be like intelligent, And Demis Hassabis is an important person. He's like, I think he's like 42. Like he's not very old.
Right.
When they were doing this, people thought they were nuts. Again, like the entire scientific community was like, "There's no such thing as AI."
Right.
This was like in
Yeah, right.
2012. That's how insane.
That's just the other day.
Yeah.
I could
Yeah.
even remember what I was doing in
Yeah.
2012. Yeah.
So Demis and his team, they were operating out of London. Him and Mustafa, and I can't remember, it's like another guy, but they were kind of like experimenting with this idea that if a machine could be not just chess, but Go, which is a very...
I've seen that documentary.
It's called AlphaGo. Yeah. So they end up beating the like best player in Go. His name was
But what's Go?
Go is a
Like-
Japanese board game.
Yeah, it's like
Okay.
it's like one of the most like complex because it's sort of like chess, but it involves
So with
like-
chess, a
Yeah.
computer can computer becomes unbeatable, right?
Yeah,
Because it can see ahead further than we can possibly see ahead so far as the moves,
Exactly.
and then that calculation. How's Go different?
So
Like-
I don't know the game well enough to specifically say why it's different, but I could tell you why they were so excited about the computer beating them is that in order to be like sort of a master of this game, there's a level of creativity. And I think what they mean by that
Right.
is
Yeah.
unexpected decision. or
Mhm.
imperfect
Well, it's maybe you have
decision.
to think in a human way,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
You have
Right.
to be creative, like in the sense that you see relationships that don't seem obvious.
Where chess is kind of like humans that are kind of perfecting chess
Yes,
are
yeah.
becoming computers
Yes.
in a sense, right?
Mm.
There's tactics,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But you're becoming a computer
Yeah.
in order to really see ahead
Mm-hmm.
and to master it. But Go is the computer actually thinking the other way around.
Yeah, it's like this wildly I mean, even when they broadcast it, people are like really like it's a much more energetic sort of thing to watch. I think it's just because again the way that the player thinks is really novel in instances and there's this player, I think his name was Lisa Go. He was I think a Korean player, but he played against AlphaGo and he was defeated and even he was just like, what on earth?
But I think he won one time.
He won one
They did
time,
it
yeah.
3 times and he
Yeah.
won 1 time, which I
Okay.
think is also incredible.
They did it 3
yeah.
times and the computer won 1 time.
No,
Or
2 times, and
and
the
he
human.
still got the chance to win.
No,
Is
he
that what
won
you-
1 time.
He won.
Yeah.
Okay.
He won once and the computer twice.
Yeah.
So there
right.
was this kind of like, the human still beat the machine.
Yeah.
At one
And
point.
at one point, and I was really happy to see that, to be honest. Chapter 1B. So but then at what point did you become really interested in it?
Yeah, so basically, like, this was all stuff that he was consuming, that I was consuming, that my partner, Rena, was consuming, and we were all sort of, like, just watching these things happen. And then around 2022... Well, okay, let me back up for a second. So technology, again, because going back to that sort of metaphor about how technology has always been a part of the arts, like, when I went to RISD, actually, they were very much a fine arts school that encouraged sort of just becoming your own node over technology. And then the access that I did have, I immediately started to recognize the power of sort of scale. So you didn't have to just like, and also like as a like perfectionist, like you want to make things better, you know, like you have a vision in your head and like the Bolex camera is just not getting you there, you know, but if I take the footage from the Bolex camera and then I put it into this like nascent thing on After Effects and I start to really screw with the timing and I start to add layers and stuff, I'm not only just getting someplace that the Bolex couldn't take me, I'm getting someplace that the technology couldn't take me.
So you're getting closer to what you had in your head.
Yeah.
It's getting you closer to what you have. Yeah.
I don't know if you know Lizzie Mayerby, but she was my co-director when I was a senior at RISD, and we had to do this thesis film. And both of us were into puppets, and we really wanted to just do puppets. But then we also wanted to see if we took photos of the puppets and then put them into these programs, and then like built on top of the programs, like what that kind of would give us. And it came as like what I could only describe as a complete mess because it was so bizarre. Like the whole thing was just weird. Like it wouldn't render. Like, do you know Dan Marsh? He's a director at
I know the name. Yeah.
It was this crazy thing, but it ended up being so bizarre, like so aesthetically strange, because not a whole lot of kids in that era were doing puppet animation with Maya, like blending that into Maya 3D and then composite. Like everything was so weird about it that it was weird enough that it got into like all these festivals. It like got it won Best Student Animation at Ottawa. Like it got us a lot of attention from all these future employers of ours. Like I ended up being recruited by Kickstarter, like and Leica, actually, because they were I was brought this 2005. That was a whole other world, and they were like, "How'd you make this?" And I was, "We literally don't know, you know." And it wasn't because we were just such geniuses. It was literally because we were willing to.
Yeah,
try.
I love that. That's 100%. That's great, and that's still a really good example of learning to use it as a tool and kind of recognizing a really good happy accident as well, right? And knowing when, oh shit, something just worked there, and let's just leave it. And that can be part of stopping the painting type thing.
Oh, that's so
And that that's really, really cool. But you are still explaining tools, right, that you're using, and then ultimately learning after that great big mess to master, right, and to kind of execute in the way that you want it to. As it kind of gets into the AI place, you could definitely say, well, it is still a tool, right? But it's also different to that as well, isn't it? Because it's outputting for people who aren't necessarily experts a particular kind of vision as well that for me feels like you haven't mastered the way to render that yourself, either with a pencil or paint. And now you're capable of doing it. It feels like you're jumping the line to me. And that's tricky, right? I find that uncomfortable. And I know that you recognize that too, but you can also really work with that tool as well, right?
Well, I think that that's a really good point to make. And I think that there's you said something just a second ago, the happy, like recognizing when to stop and the happy accents. Like I gave this talk last week about this exact example, which is when I was first starting my career, I'd been hired by, I'll just say his name because he's a name dropping company. Don't put this in, but but you can't put his name in it. But his name is Christo. He was my first employer. And he was sort of a legend in the LA community. And he also had a company called Blind. And what he did was he would pull the best students from Art Center and Otis into his studio. And he pulled me in probably because my work was just so bizarre. I think also like other people had been talking about it. And he was like, I'll just get her in. So he brought me in. And I think he was like, oh, what's this RISD kid have to offer? Like this little art student over from the East Coast. Like I'm a West Coast person. But it became very obvious to him very quickly that I actually was a total like dum-dum when it came to technology. Like I didn't know how to kern type. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't know how to outline type. I didn't know anything really about the tools of Photoshop. I knew how to have a paint, you know? And he was very, he was mean about it, honestly. But I remember this one situation where he asked me to design these black and white wolves, right? And I didn't want to just like sketch them and then scan them and then put them into Photoshop because that would have been the simpler route, obviously.
They're on your website, right?
Yeah, they're like,
Yeah, I remember.
But there's a lot of them actually to become a whole thing. But basically, what happened in that situation was I didn't know how to use any of the tools, but and I had to cut out a wolf because I didn't want to draw it. So I had to cut it out in Photoshop. And there's this tool called the pen tool, right? Very like it's a precision tool. And when you're new learning the Wacom pen and, it's really hard to use. And I couldn't for the life of me figure out how to use this pen tool. And I was trying to cut out these wolves and Chris kept pacing back up behind my desk thinking like, Lauren, where are my wolves? Where are my wolves? And so I finally looked over. I was like, I just need to figure something out quickly. And I saw there was this other tool called the polygonal lasso tool, which is
I love
nasty. That. Yeah, because it's easy.
It just does the job for you.
You just cut it out as these jagged little ugly lines. It doesn't do anything perfect, right? And Chris is just breathing down my neck, and I'm just like in a hurry, and I start just hacking at these wolves and just cutting them up, and then I just use a like heavy curve on them, and then I threw some ink splatters on them, and then Chris comes up from behind me. He's just like, "Yo, stop!" And I thought in that moment like I was fired because they looked emaciated. They looked like I had created these starved, sad wolves. And I just like had this expectation that he was going to like use me as an example in front of the whole studio about like how important the tools been.
Yeah.
And instead he was just like, yo, those are so sick.
Oh.
And he was like,
of course.
Yeah, so when I pulled out like, years later and looked at this, it was because like, it's like scale contrast and shape language. Like really, especially with characters, and that was very apparent in the gorillas, where you use shape language in a way that people just weren't doing before, because usually there's symmetry to characters, and it's just like screw the symmetry. I'm just gonna make these weird, like leggy, like characters, and so I think in the back of my mind, all those sort of masters that were like using things asymmetrically, it just sort of happened. And the thing is, AI cannot do that.
Right.
Ah.
Gladly.
What?
It's too perfect.
It needs to look at.
That's also something that I think annoys me so much about AI is that, AI creates something from something that's already been done.
Yes.
Like because it feeds off some, like it will never create anything
And does
new.
that mean, right, if it does that, right, and it starts self-referencing,
Yeah.
isn't that when it finds its singularity?
Yeah.
When creatively, is it right? That's the one thing that I am encouraged by. I was talking to my friend Dan, and he was telling me how it is exponentially growing so much that the absolute vast majority of stuff that it will be referencing for artwork in the not too distant future is itself.
Yeah.
Right? And then from that point on, surely would it mean, if I think about that, I almost think, well, that would mean that it will start shrinking into only one single idea.
I think I have a good answer for both of you guys, because you were saying that if AI is becoming, like, it's almost just becoming a homogenous, just self-referential thing. And it's actually happening in fashion too. It's like fractally so similar in a way, is that, because if you think about it, like, we've just homogenized all of fashion. There's very unique sort of points of view and perspectives. But I think that there's one really key thing. I've actually boiled AI down to two really important things to like just that I hold as my true sort of compass, which is the first one is that everything is just changing so quickly. Like I was saying, is that you have to be willing to be like just learning the tools constantly and not learn all of the tools. It's not necessary to learn all of them, but it's important that you try, not to try to learn all of them, but to try to learn things that you think would fit into your sort of skill set, because the most democratizing thing out of all this is that nobody is as much of a master in their domain as they were before, from a skill set point of view, not a vision point of view. That's a whole other thing. But the other thing, and this is what is going to make what you're describing, or how I feel, is that there are people in the world who are like, they've almost like coalesced to become, or have sort of positioned themselves to become sort of the next pioneers of AI filmmaking. The problem is that it is apparent to me, and I think to most experts or to people who are actually in film and art and craft, that they have not rendered it themselves. And the simple reason isn't because their stuff doesn't look really visually cool. It's because when you're working with AI, because it's such a tool that wants to generalize and find the most perfect solution to the problem, you, the human, have to be willing to be the imperfect part of the equation, which means that you have to be willing to just completely break things and like explore.
It's like, it's pretty much like, I'm just thinking about my upbringing. It's the exact opposite that my father taught me to do. Like he was like very specific about it. Like I remember he would tell me always, like, you have to, drawing a mandala, for example, his thing was always like, you have to draw in the lines, like draw. And I was like the least person drawing in the lines. Like I was like the exact opposite. So I think it's quite encouraging, though. Like this is, I think, a positive thing where people need to unlearn that perfection, or like feeling also bad when you're not managing to draw in the lines. I mean, like I'm ultra messy. I'm just like very messy, like in anything that I'm doing. And it's like, that's just how I am. But I'm still able to deliver something really good and something really like what I'm supposed to deliver. But it's not on the highest perfection, but it's also that I personally stopped trying to be perfect, because it's just like it's tiring. Like I'm tired of being perfect all the time. I'm just like
enough of me being perfect.
I'm just using
time to
3
loosen
layers
up.
of face cream.
But that's the truth.
It's a little bit like the way we wanted to throw this podcast together. Right? It was a very specific choice to make it look as kind of shitty as possible.
Using the lasso
because
as, like
it's all meant to be cut out really bad. It's kind of colored in with texture, but it's kind of like even the colors are just kind of pick it. Just don't worry anymore. And I like it because I even like just doing those little scribbles and things, because you don't have to.
And then
you don't have to think about it, and that this time it's good enough's okay. I'll take that bit.
Yeah, and especially thinking about the last title that we made about Thank You for Listening 2026. It's like we've waited for a scanner to arrive, I don't know how long. And the scanning is like the worst scanner in the world. Like so, but it's like you're just like, it's good enough. Like it just changes the colors, but it's not a bad thing. But to come back to the questions, I think talking about the New York Was it in New York, like in 2005 with Crystal or the first guy?
That was like Los Angeles, but
Yeah. Chapter 3. From that point on, how did your career and things started to roll out into different art forms and disciplines? And what kind of sacrifices did you have to make to become who you are? Was it just trial and error until it clicked?
Yeah, I think everything is trial and error. I mean, I've been the most like the messiest. I'll just go like the most emotionally messy person in an office because I cared so much to do things, and I think that obsession, like it was like a manic obsession, really drove people around. They either loved me because they're like, "Oh, it's cute," like I want to be around happy, arty girl, or they just like could not stand it. You know, it was like one or the other, and so, but it didn't in those environments. Like I think the most important thing to do if you're that kind of person is to single out environments where you feel like you can push every boundary possible and find people who are doing the same thing, which is why like Pete, you and I circle up the same people probably for a good reason because they're the same people who want to explore and they devote themselves to this craft, you know.
And I think the thing, just to kind of go into that, to do with all of the different techniques that you use and talking about AI self-referencing, animation has the worst habit in the world, I personally think, of self-referencing itself.
Right.
So when one thing works, everyone references that one thing that worked and it becomes a derivative of the one thing that worked. And
it's like
animation is the least brave.
Yeah, it's true.
Animation is the least brave art form in filmmaking when it should be the most. Because you can manipulate every single frame, every single color, image, tone, whatever you want to do is completely at your hands. But unfortunately, the bigger kind of groups that control animation in general are afraid of that. But they have a very conservative amount of train track that they will go down that stays within a particular parameter because that's where success lies.
Exactly.
Breaking out of that is the hardest challenge, right? And then not self-referencing animation, but like you do, where you're trying different techniques and different ideas, suddenly you're cross-referencing and you're cross-training. Cross-referencing is better. And you're kind of getting ideas from photography or a sculpture, the light on that, actually let's use that in a CG render, as opposed to everyone referencing the last CG render that made everybody go up and down. And that drives me crazy. And I think that's where we kind of connect on stuff as well, is just not referencing, almost strictly not referencing yourself or animation to come up with a new thing. And
But just to like go back to
I think to go actually what Pete just said was interesting because it actually comes to this nicely too, is that when you're young, and we'll have a whole other conversation about women in the workplace, but when you're young and I'll just say like for me as a woman, and this was nobody's fault, it was just the social culture at the time, is that if you are at all emotional, you were seen as potentially crazy.
I know.
So it makes it much more difficult to make brave decisions or be sort of a leader in the group to need the brave decisions. And whereas like when I was coming up, for men, if you were like emotional, it was like, oh, they're just really passionate directors. You know, they're just passionate leaders. And so that enabled them to, at least some of my colleagues who were roughly in my age group, I think do more brave things with animation because they were they were sort of anointed from other people in a way that felt different than my situation, which is that when I was trying to do brave things, so to speak, it was hard to get the pass through. And actually, I'll give a really specific example that was a really big career defining point on our colleague doing so. When I was at PsyOp, and that was a very an incredibly intense but beautiful environment of really hyper creative people. They also have really, really excellent EPs and managing directors. But the two are very different. They have very different functions. The managing director they're really specifically trying to herd cats, and try to make sure that we're all not completely missing marks here. And then the creative directors, of many of whom at SciUp were the owners that had a stake in the creative business, were also just, hyper creative people who really wanted to push the boundaries as much as possible. And I remember this very specific moment where the assignment was to design a cow emerging from milk, which was like,
I know that spot.
yeah, if
Yeah. Yeah.
if you visualize
Have
a
you seen
cow-
it? Yeah, it looks amazing.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. If you visualize a cow emerging from milk, you pretty much, it should look probably pretty, because it was also for a yogurt ad, and so yogurt, they want to sell yogurt, they don't want to scare people to eat yogurt. Yeah, then but and this is just the conflict, a little bit of luck and a little bit of just people being very brave, and then also like the leadership. But my colleague and friend Evan Mears, who unfortunately lost in May, he said, I think you got this in your head. Just go home and make some milky wolves, or milky cows, because it's a very, I don't always like to sort of goof around with the things. But so I came in the next day, and I had a very simple cow with milk, and then I had a very, very dark cow with milk. And Evan was
Dark in what way? What do you mean? Like
it was like an underlaid cow.
Okay.
It was like
Right.
a moody cow, like the saddest cow ever. So cool, actually, said it horns. It was like emerging from this seep. It wasn't
a
white.
splash of
Dark milk.
Okay.
Dark milk, right?
Right.
Chocolate. Evan looked at this thing. Yeah, I was like, yeah, I could have been talking chocolate. Evan looked at this thing, and he was just like, that sink. Look, but that's our cover page. And I remember, and bless her heart, she's a fantastic managing director. She was just like, that's going to give me nightmares. And she just was, it was a little bit of a fight between the two, or a little bit of a disagreement. And Evan obviously was going to win, because he was just going to do it either way. And it won us the pitch. And then the team, they were also just this bizarre group of creative people. And one of them was like, we should have Willem Dafoe as the voiceover.
Ooh.
And Willem Dafoe at the time was coming out with a movie called Antichrist. And so I guess the question would be like, why would you hire Willem Dafoe to do a yogurt ad as well? But there was this other guy, I think.
He's into yogurt.
Yeah.
He's just
Such a cow.
He's just really into getting cows.
It was like a confluence. There's this guy in Kevin. He's a pretty big rock star in the advertising side of things, but he was at a company called Molyneux, which is the agency. Sadly, they just got, that's a whole other conversation. That whole advertising agency just got sucked into Omnicom, but
all right,
they're dissolved. But it was just like a confluence of people all making like brave animation decisions to do something very unusual. And it barely made it through, but ended up winning a ton of awards, and it ended up really enabling me to have much more say in the creative direction of things because of its success. That could have easily gone the other way too.
Yeah.
That could have just been.
but but that was a brave decision that you got to make there, doing the dark cow version that worked, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of opened up doors.
I think
to-
and it's our responsibility, and you know this, and I know this, it's like our responsibility to try to push that as much as possible, because what it then does is it says, all right, we can eat like art. It wasn't so much that it was like a gothic cow, it was that it was emotional.
Right.
It makes people feel something. And so it's our responsibility, especially in the age of AI, because it does flatten everything, is to lean into again, our imperfect inner narratives and stories and feelings, and push that as much as possible, because otherwise it's just going to become like a nasty, flattened, bland soup that rises to the top, because again, artists are notoriously horrible at positioning themselves,
But look, I think it's exactly what you said there. I like a ton is that it kind of emotionally resonates or is emotive in some way, right? And sometimes you could even be going in one direction with it, but it actually works in a completely different one. But it's the emotion of the image that's really important, right? And the story, there's the function, and there's the way you do it. And I like hearing that a ton, because that's something that I slowly learned that's what I really gravitate towards. And I would used to previously call it atmosphere. And then start realizing that actually what I'm trying to get is the emotion out of it. And when I know that what I'm seeing, I'm looking at for a really long time, I know I'm happy with it. Do you know what I mean? And when I look at something that might come in and I'm like, oh, right, I'm going to put that to one side. It really, I've got a little kind of inside barometer that if I stare at it and want to just keep looking at it, and I'm kind of getting attached to it, I know that there's something in it. And it's almost like
It's
I could
something
probably even
human in
time
it.
myself.
Right.
Go, oh, yeah.
Chapter 4, Sound.
Yeah.
But then let me go also to this area where for sound, like to talk about sound. And I've been watching a video, I don't know, it's a few years ago, I think it's on YouTube, where you speak about replacing voiceovers, like real voice actors with AI voices, which is the opposite. It's like actually the opposite of what we're talking about right now, because it's like it takes out the emotion. And then at the end of the day, it also just like that's one of the questions we were writing down. It's like with the with shortcutting for time and money and cutting out humans, but then wanting to replace the humanness, like the humanity through technology again. Like,
No, that's a really good question, because especially when you're coming, like there's certain things that are like easier for some reason for AI to sort of replicate, and like voiceovers seem to be something that very early on, it's still not great, and it's actually getting creepier. Like they're trying to figure out, a lot of these companies, at some point we're gonna, like right now we have Siri, who's garbage, right? We have, I know we have, I know it's like a terrible AI, and then there's ChatGPT has those creepy voices that, if you hit the wrong button, they'll start talking to you, and you're like, no, go away. And I think like that's a major problem with AI in general, is that I know a lot of these AI companies are trying to solve it, because I've talked to a lot of them about it. But so there's two parts of this. There's the like creative, like exploration, like I want to say experimental stuff, right? And that's where I've been playing a lot, just for the constraints of being like an independent artist, where it's like, if I want to explore a spoken word, but I don't have, like I'm not great at spoken word, but like Reno's good at spoken word, but he's a dude. And so if I don't have a girl, it's like, well, maybe I'll play with an AI and see if it gives me that sort of texture. But that's like from as a pure artistic expression, that's like much more of a like painting.
Yeah.
yeah.
But maybe, I
like-
mean,
like,
maybe there's a distinction
to-
here to
Yeah.
make as well.
Yeah.
Is if it's a commercial, then if there's money involved, you don't go down that,
Yeah.
right? And then if it's your own artwork, then you're allowed to use the tools that you learn to use, right?
But
It becomes also, if that own artwork then develops into something that ultimately brings teams together, then it's super beneficial, right? It's such a tricky one.
But
When-
like just to throw in something a bit more controversial here, or like a bit more maybe provocative, but you could also just pick up the phone and ask a friend to do it for you.
Yes.
And you would have like a whole different palette, because you don't have to change the parameters. You just have a person saying like, try it a bit more happy, try it a bit more sad, because at the end of the day, you can say to the computer, make it more sad or make it happier, but you would have to like tweak everything. Like you would have to tweak knobs and stuff like that,
There's actually, no, there's 3 parts of differentiation. There's the like I want to say testing, texturing, painting with video thing, which is like just experimental random things that you could call a friend and do. But if you want to like explore broadly a few different things, like if you want like very different characters really quickly, just to see sort of what's going on. It's not a, this isn't a pursuit that you would ever monetize. It's more of a like, I'm just curious how this works. But when we're talking about actual commercials and film, 100%, I am personally against very much the use of AI as a voice, and the use of AI as specific shots. And it's very specific. The reason specifically has to deal with like my 2 little points of AI, like we constantly have to be learning, and then we have to be willing to be the imperfect part of the equation. You're not going to get that through AI as like a full thing, And it really bothers me if I see these like AI films with just this bizarre,
Mm.
monotone sort of voice. Yeah. So, but so there's those parts of it, but then there's the other questions is very theoretical and this thought theory style, but it's like how comfortable we grew up without it, right? So we as people like we have a very fine-tuned need to have human like texture in our voices, right? But for like, you know, the next generations, how important is it going to be? Is it going to change? You know, we don't know. The question is, we don't know. They would prefer to have it be traditional, beautiful, and human. You know, but yeah. So I like, for example, Microsoft. Like I was talking to them about this idea of, you know, this isn't just Microsoft. This is everybody. Actually, take out Microsoft. Let's just say everybody. Everybody, all the AI companies are trying to solve for where the puck is going. Like 10 years from now. And I think the prediction is that on some level, we're all going to have some sort of avatar assistant, like it's not going to be these generic creepy voices. It's going to be somebody that you want, like a voice that feels like the inner voice in your head, and like
I would not want to talk to that person.
but it's going to be like, something you want to converse with so you can brainstorm, Yeah.
It just, to me, it sounds like there will be different movements.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. In that, because, for example, listening to that already existing or this developing idea in the world, it's something that I don't like, doesn't resonate with me, but then it does resonate with a lot of other people. So I guess to me, AI always will be and stays like a movement that some people follow, some people don't follow it. But now that we slipped into the whole AI world, I'm curious about sound stuff. So what other sound tools do you use when you work apart from the voiceover?
Yeah, it's really, again, it's really, I find this stuff very controversial because even though I should have found the visual stuff more controversial, the sound stuff is getting really, I want to say interesting, but it's also a little bit like sad, is that, there's this one particular organization called Suno. Do you know them? They're like, so they essentially, like, you can create any track you want. You can create some sort of like music. You can literally prompt it to, have it be like played in the Sistine Chapel with the specific acoustics that would be bouncing. And it's very specific in its, or you can have a track that's like a popular hit. And there's this really interesting thing happening where there was, how TikTok has trends, like sound trends, right?
Music.
Yeah, music trends. They had this one song, it was called I Run, and it blew up, right? And then someone figured out that it was AI. And the whole, like, everybody that was using it just, like, completely
turned against it.
And was discussed. It's kind of, it must be kind of like,
And it's not, and so that's interesting because also, like, I was driving to meet a colleague and the song came on. It was so beautiful. I was just so amazed by it. It was almost perfect. It was really interesting. I'm not even a country person, but it had like this country, and then it transitioned beautifully into this like almost like Mexican sonata. I don't know. It was just beautiful. And I looked at the track, and the track was called "We Are So Fucked." And I was like, wait a second, that's not the name of this song. It was just on Spotify.
Right, weird.
And I was like, I think that this is AI. I was like, I've never heard of these people. It's too beautiful. It's too perfect. And the track is literally called "We Are So Fucked."
Right.
It's like almost as though someone made it on Suno, posted on Spotify. I was just like, guys, we're so fucked, And so anyway, I always say,
so
it was a joke.
the
like
idea
it was like
behind
the joke
look
is
how
on
good
you.
this is,
it was like, do you? And then I thought, dude, does this? I mean, I love this song. Like, do I want to keep listening to it? But does it get ruined if it's AI? And the answer is yeah.
It does.
I think it does.
Yeah.
I
don't want.
does.
I'm not. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
It feels to me. It feels like you've been tricked and manipulated.
Yeah.
Like when you
Yeah.
like watching some videos that I've seen that make me laugh.
Yeah.
And then I'm told it was AI. I'm pissed off.
Yeah.
Because I've been tricked by that wasn't even a person, and I thought it was a person slipping over and doing whatever it is that's funny. But actually it's not. It's an arrangement of pixels.
Oh my God.
That has just formed in a particular way that knows it's going to make you smile at least. And you're just left going, What a shitty thing.
Let me also give that example because I have this friend, he's really into AI. He lives in Berlin, and he also published a book making letters with AI, like beautiful stuff. And he posted yesterday, he posted a picture of him with Kate Moss, 2 pictures. And it's also kind of like the flies like to go, or the bees like to go to the honey. So we talk occasionally when he sees that I'm in Berlin, or when I'm in Berlin I reach out to him like just in person. But because I was like, how the fuck do you meet Kate Moss? So I reached out to him and I'm like, I have so many questions. And he's like, it's AI. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Because it looked real. It looked so real. And it's kind of frustrating because I felt kind of ertappt. How do you say ertappt? Like caught on kind of like caught on camera. How I fell into that trap by kind of reaching out, because I'm like, oh my God, my friend knows Kate Moss, and it's like, that's just not real. But yeah, I think I hope in sound. I mean, honestly, I'm working on a creature right now, a creature design. And you have so many different animals, and there's this like very famous cheat sheet available online, and it's interactive, so you can go from the lowest frequency to the highest frequency, and it shows you perfectly like what's the frequency band, and in which area do we hear it, what's the type of instrument. So it really gives you every single information, but with instruments. So I talked to AI, and I'm not using OpenAI anymore. I'm using Claude, which is I like Claude much better. It's a better model, yes, and it's from the same people. They just have better ethical ideas, I hope. So I'm talking with AI to figure out how do I design creatures, and to me it's always a kickoff, because every time I start doing it step by step, does not work. No matter what it is, if it's voice EQing, if it's some compression or whatever, because always, like, to me compression still is a little bit of a mystery. I totally get it. I know how to work with it, but I'm asking things like, how do you explain compression to a 10-year-old? So I can just better understand it sometimes. Or in the case of the creatures, it's like I said, give me a full cheat sheet for creatures. So I have this sheet now because I know exactly what it makes sense what it told me, like what the reasons were, why to use this creature sound or this frequency, or block out this frequency range, blah, blah. But then when you do it the way it tells you to do it, it doesn't work. It's too complicated. It's not necessarily, it's like it just adds too much unnecessarily thinking.
It's probably the ultimate rule book version. Isn't it? It's probably the ultimate step by step.
And it never works.
Part of the process to be creative is to know how to to know the steps that are most important to you and the steps that aren't as important to you. And it probably is feeding you the most perfect way to do it, which doesn't necessarily mean that it's giving you your version of it.
Chapter 5: The Ultimate Rule Book.
No, it's not even about my version of it. It's just like, this is just not how you design a sound. It simply isn't. It's like these are like the parameters you can use to do it, but you cannot do like A, B, C, D, E, F, G in order to come to the result that you want. These are just like options, and you can feed up the options. And that's how I use AI, for example, with sound in a very reduced version, where, for example, there's this, like, The Cook, the Thief, his wife and her lover. The opening scene is ultra complex when it, like, visually, and then sound wise as well. It's like highly complex. And sometimes when I'm overwhelmed with, like, how do I start working, I literally ask Claude, what are the elements in that scene? And then it just gives me a small list, so it's just a kickoff for me to think, because oftentimes when you're overwhelmed with what you're supposed to do, especially when you're a starter and you don't have that routine and you have that brain, like, memory or whatnot, I think it is helpful, but not in the sense that it replaces you. It just refreshes your memory. So I find it really useful. But again, whoever tries to do step by step with AI, it's not going to work.
Yeah, no, it's true. And you made a really good point, because literally when you start to describe the frequencies, you have to know even what that means. Now, yeah, like one thing like I've noticed is that I still get to see really good AI. Like, I'm really waiting for somebody to like do something really great, but literally I have not. I literally like look for this stuff every day.
I think, sorry when I intervene here, but I think the problem is that no one wants to see something good from AI. It's like, I want you to help me to remind stuff, but I don't want you to replace visuals or sounds or whatever that are natural, that I'm being born with. You know, I'm lucky enough that I hear and that I see and that I can move around. I don't want a computer to do that. That's why I think it will be really hard to hit that threshold to say like it's really good, because as soon as I realize it's AI, as we were talking about it, it becomes shit.
Like, I figured something out yesterday, but it could have only been figured out if I had spent 20 years obsessing over this stuff, which is when you see an animation, for an AI animation, it doesn't really quite understand like the difference between like 2s or 4s or 8s or coils.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that vernacular because nobody really trained it on it. It just was like, this is like the kind of history of animation. And so my benchmark test has always been those like inky wolves, because they're so disproportionate, not like they're just so irregular. And I did this test where I could feed my original designs into the AI, and it can pretty much copy it, right? If I prompt it though, like it can't copy it. You know, it's
What's
just
prompt?
so if I give it the prompt like create
The
black
written
and white
sentence.
wolves,
Oh, okay.
it just wants to generalize and make like these like black and white wolves, right? So the interesting thing, so it's never going to be able to really understand what you have in your head, and it's never going to be able to understand the nuances of certain things, like certain frequencies or animation. That's why I still feel like the future of all of this stuff has to be that we train the next generation up in the traditions, the traditional aspects of
This is nice.
because, like, for example, I had a wolf design. I wanted a profile. I could draw the profile. That's a whole craft in itself. But the purpose of this exploration is not for me to draw the wolf in profile. I just need a wolf in profile so I can have a run shot, right? So I asked the AI to draw my original design in profile, which it did actually very well because my proportions were there. And then I asked it to animate like a run cycle, and it looked terrible. And the reason is because it was like all in ones, and the animation was just sort of mass. So what I then did was like did the same thing I would do in a traditional pipeline. I put the keyframes in. You know, it still couldn't get there because it still wanted to do all this in betweening. So what I did then, this is so counterintuitive, and the only people that are going to understand this are actual filmmakers, which is why, at least for me, I try to be the sounding voice that's like, I agree with everything you're saying. I don't like to consume AI stuff, but the tools are also there for us as like people who come from these backgrounds that have extensive knowledge in these visual systems. I stretched the video from 100% to 200%, right? Which looked like weird, slow video, like compressed and strange. Then I went in and I hand spliced every third frame.
Right.
I deleted it, put it together, and it looked like the animation, right? Now, I could have done this myself by hand, you know, but the process of figuring that out, what that's given me is this sort of new tool that I can figure something out quickly. And if it becomes something I want to explore further, then I can bring it to like, you know, we can like from a production point, figure out how to do it. 'Cause it's never been- So it's an interesting thing. I think the same thing was for sound. You, Sophie, have to have the extensive knowledge, like you said earlier, while you're going through your hard drives of stuff to just even remind yourself that you know these things. It's like you have to have that personal experience, and your personal experience paired with the actual situation or the conditions that you're in now, you know, in this room with this light, with Pete pacing on a call or whatever, you know, like you have to have that psychological environment for in order to affect what you're going to create. And that's going to be distinct, even if you're using AI, than any other thing, you know, that people are doing if they're just using straight AI. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think when it's a guideline, like you're talking about, Sophie, I get that. It's kind of like yeah, it's like a helping hand type thing
Yeah.
to help you to remember where to be. I also don't mind it as a proof of concept. If you've come up with the concept and you're trying to prove it out, that I think that can just save you time, and that can save you a whole bunch of people coming in to help you out that you just kind of led down the wrong path for a bit. So you can kind of start shortcutting some of that stuff where you're trying to come up with something, and it's helping you come up with something. That feels good. That feels good, I think. And then it's like where I found it useful as well is casting, where you can't otherwise, suddenly in a pitch doc, you can put a whole casting list together that's actually really close to where you want to go in a live action world, right? And you're like, oh, this was my idea. It's now not just written, and it's not just a sourced image of somebody that you're just kind of guessing, well, it's kind of like this. You can kind of get into a really good place with it like that. And it's a good tool like that,
But
right?
it's a tool.
It's a supporting tool.
Yeah.
It is when it starts becoming the final product that it feels really tricky, right? And
I think what I like about this discussion is that actually, like, I think the whole point of AI, like the whole point is to try it out, but not to let it do the work for, like,
and
it
I
does
guess
the
the
work for you.
AI godfathers and the people you talked about earlier were thinking, well, this should be a human support system, right? That's what it is. And then the thing is, if it starts becoming manipulating in a way that it is replacing people as opposed to being support for them, that's when it's starting to tread on too many toes, right? And you're just kind of like, what? Yeah, that's just less cool.
There's people out there just to be the counter person, because I know a lot of these people, I know they mean well, like they have script ideas and they want to explore the script ideas, and they're doing the same sort of thing where it's like kind of a texture where they're like, I just want to explore these shocks, this is the script I've had for a while and I really want to do that. And I think that's great. Like I absolutely encourage people to do that. But I think the problem really lies, again, it goes back to like people's livelihoods and a business model. And the problem with all this is it always comes down to business models. Every single thing is a business model on this planet. It's just the way capitalism works. And we want to be in capitalism because we want, the industrial revolution to occur. We don't want to be like, caught in some socialist environment where nobody innovates because they're going to, get beheaded. So we're like happy here. But the problem is that we have this bizarre world going on where we have ethically trained models, like in a lot of these like big Hollywood outlets are coming out. I think someone just announced yesterday, I can't remember who it was. It was like, I know Natasha Leon has something with, it was Moon Valley, and their AI model is Mari. I know that there's a lot of support around that. And on the reverse,
What's his kind of point of view?
Chapter 6. James Cameron,
who is a brilliant director, and but I kind of identify with him. Like model, like image generators, they were the ones I think that sort of brokered like Comfy UI and all these sort of like they were tools for artists. They weren't these models that just hijacked styles and training models and all these things. So what happened was he went, I don't remember what it was, but it was in the UK. It was the High Court, and they were trying. It was a defining case that basically was just trying to figure out like, do they have the right to to have trained on these certain things? And the court ruled in the favor of James Cameron and Stability AI that, and I've always felt this way, and I've been trying to communicate to everybody, like as much as I can. The best way to put it is like, AI is like trained on every single thing possible. And so when it goes to like output, it's basically doing the same thing a human brain really does, which is to process everything into right. But now it has very limited degrees. Human brains are much more complex. We still don't understand them. They're like insane, right? And we do understand these models for the most. No, we don't really, but like we haven't done it yet. So I think Cameron's team's point was it's operating like a brain. If somebody wanted to make a film like that, they wanted to make Terminator, and they went and they watched Terminator, they don't have to go to James Cameron himself and say, hey, can I have your permission to train off of Terminator? They just go watch Terminator, but they make their version of Terminator. And so that was sort of his take on it, is that
I would challenge that a little bit.
Yeah.
And that is that, yeah, you can be inspired,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's the difference between copying and being
Yeah.
inspired by it.
Yeah,
And if you go and make your version of Terminator
Yeah.
and say there's a whole bunch that does reference the original,
Yeah.
but if you've brought something new,
Yeah.
if you've brought a point of view or you've expanded on that
Yeah.
makes it your own,
Yeah.
I think that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. But
Yeah.
if you've trained something specifically to replicate and
Yeah.
work with that,
Absolutely.
and it's not about inspiration, it's about copying
Yeah.
and learning on the cheap,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if I sit completely comfortably with that, even
Yeah.
though James Cameron does.
No,
It's
but
kind
you
of like,
can.
artists borrow.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But you borrow, but you give as well. So
Yeah.
I think it's that that, oh, look, if I'm going to enjoy being inspired by that moment,
Yeah.
I want to give something to it in my version of it, and I'll paint it in a different way.
Yeah.
That's kind of like that's its own kind of creative evolution, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, and maybe the argument is that that's what the AI is doing, but I don't know that it is. I think it kind of it's not bringing its own point of view. It's
it's not.
bringing
It's not,
a
yeah.
zero point of view to
Zero,
it,
yeah.
and yeah,
But points of view can only come with experience of life, no? And
Exactly.
and that's what AIs just don't have.
Or maybe they will. We don't know. If we ever get to a point where we give AI like humanhood, human rights,
Oh,
I
mean, that's
right. Going back a little bit as well, and we were just talking about, and I was thinking about it. We were talking about, look, if the output is AI as a finished product, then that's a problem,
Yeah.
right? And then it's kind of like, wait a minute, you're a director and I'm a director, and that's what we do. But within those teams, if you think of a scriptwriter and the output, a scriptwriter is a contributor to the final output,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But if a scriptwriter is taken out,
Yeah.
that's not fair, is it?
Yeah.
If the output then isn't the final result, the scriptwriter's final result is the script.
Yeah.
It's not the movie necessarily,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So there are final outputs within making the movie.
Yeah.
So it just becomes so muddy, doesn't it?
Chapter 7, Motherhood. I like it a lot when women that work in tech
Yeah.
and you just proven that you know so much about it, when they share also, and then when they're open about being a mother,
Yeah.
being a woman, and sharing also that life as a mother or a woman, because my take on this is that me as a technician,
Yeah.
you're as a technician, having other women sharing their world that I live in as well. I mean, world in the sense of creative world, or the, like, job world that I live in as well. And you get more examples being more open and being more supportive of the topic itself.
Yeah.
You feel you feel related, and you have someone that speaks to you.
Yeah.
So I think it, like, looking at your YouTube, you talk about motherhood
Oh, gosh,
very
yeah.
openly. I don't know, I don't know how you feel about this video now, but
it's a really important. Yeah, it's a really big thing.
but I think, like, just coming from this heavy AI kind of mountain
Yeah.
back into the real life as well.
Yeah.
Like, what's your take on sharing that and, like, being open about it?
Problem with the videos is that I just don't have like it yet. It's a before you have kids, I mean, this, it's like you have all the time in the world to do, completely whatever you want. But then everything after having kids is a choice between time with the child and time with your work. So it's actually, I thought I would be like a jet setting mom and just like give my kid to a nanny, and that would be it, right? That was my perception of like my personality my whole life. I always knew I wanted kids, but I always thought that I'd have a lot more support. But when I had Brender, I thought like this, like it was the whole thing that was going around like in culture at the time when he was born, is that like I can be replaced as a director anywhere, but I can't be replaced as his mother. And there's certain times in this child's life that he is especially in need of his mother. And so, I mean, the father obviously too, but the mother is like very much in the first year, especially. So it's like a constant battle between like Lauren and Mother Lauren, where it's like, if I even going to a conference last week, it's like it's the hardest thing in the world. Like I really needed to do that and I really wanted to do it. But I just, you suddenly feel entirely guilty about leaving this child, for you if they have, the parents and the other support system. So.
Yeah.
And do you have other females that are going through the same thing that you talk to and that are living in the same space, like work in tech, work in AI, work as directors and stuff?
Well, yeah, the closest one actually is like Kim. She's not as much in tech and she's not a director, but she has a shared experience in the sense that she is very committed to her craft and she also has a son. So Kim Delaney, for the record, but we talk about this a lot because it is really, and I think it's not just mothers, it's also men. Like, I mean, I've never talked to you about this, Pete, but and talked to like other friends who are fathers and like the difference between their life before and after.
Yeah.
But like you're like, absolutely, I want this child in my life. There's no world in which I don't want them here. But you do mourn this person that was able to constantly just sort of explore these ideas that are in your head. For me personally, at the end of the day, it's like, I think you cannot do both. Like that's just a lie that you cannot do both in the way that you think you can. I'll correct that. Because in my head growing up, everyone's like, you should be. Like a man is not a plan. You should be a career person, make your own money, be independent, blah, blah, blah. And then have your family, right? But the way that sort of makes it sound is that like, just be strong enough. Just be strong enough to handle both and you can do both. But the reality has something to do with strength. It has to do with physical time, and so you literally are just choosing every day between these things that you love. And so like, I think the narrative was really goofy. Our society, Western culture especially, has this like tendency to do this pendulum swing where it's like my mother's generation taught my generation because her mother's generation taught them like a man is not a plan. Like you have to make your own money, like be independent, like go women's like raw, and feminism is a good thing for women, like making this whole thing, but then it really confused the sort of gender dynamics and like marital relationship dynamics and turned them into like oftentimes now I see a lot of women who are the primary caregiver, but then they're also the primary breadwinner because just also society was like women need to earn as much as men, and they're like, just kidding, give you more money, women. So I see a lot of women that like now make more than their male partners, not because they're better, because the pendulum just swung the other direction. Super off dynamic where the woman makes more than the man, but the woman still needs to be at home more for the baby. And so it's like this bizarre thing. And so I think the narrative just needs to switch. If I were to tell younger women, it would be a few things, which is that like the very primary basic thing that I've noticed, and this is off topic a little bit, but like for women, they're also told they can have kids later in life. They can't. You have to like, some women get very lucky, but you have to like really prepare for that, which is like, make sure that you have your fertility figured out in your 30s. And then the second part that's not really talked about a lot with women is just that once you do become a mother, just make sure that you have like a financial plan for you to be able to stay home with your child. Because even though, like I told this woman, this executive producer in London, she was like, I was pregnant and I was working on a pitch with her, and she's like, at this awards, like what's going to happen? You're going to be on maternity leave. I was like, no, I'm not going to be on maternity leave. I'll take like 2 weeks off. I'll be right back. It'll be fine. But like, then I had Brenda and I was like, I'm not going back to work. Are you kidding? Like, no way. Like these people are crazy. Like there's no way there's no version of this world where I was going to miss out on those moments for some stupid commercial project, So it's like, I think those preparing women for those mental like things that they don't expect, it's huge.
I think a freelancer versus a fixed employee is something to talk about.
We have very poor maternal care. This care is fine, but the leave is bad. And if you have an employer, they'll give you, I have a lot of friends who are like, power women or whatever, and they would negotiated like 12 weeks of maternity leave instead of 8 or something like that. But it's still a trade because, you know, I know they enjoy their careers, and like two of them in particular have really, really like high ranking positions.
Yeah, maybe they're pretty established already.
Yeah.
And then they've got the foresight to foresee what they need to negotiate, you know, and there's no risk in negotiating because they've got very, strong sense of security where they are. Freelancing is going to be different. I think that's hard, surely, because you do have to give up entire opportunities through that, where you're not just negotiating a bit of time, more time off, and coming back to something that was already there. You're actually giving away something that you could often see as opportunity, right? But getting the right priority right is, it sounds like you made good choices there. But there'll be tempting things, your imagination before that situation happens is you can balance both, I could imagine. As a guy from this, I have been able to because I wasn't the mother, and you do go out to work and then you come back and you do what you can, but the situation's entirely different. And yeah.
But for women, like the way I handled it, and I think that this is like important, is that like when Render was very, very little, and they're very helpless. Like they're very dependent. It's like a little flesh blob, and if you leave them, they hopefully don't go anywhere, but they could roll off the thing. They could just die. They like it's this constant thing. You're just constantly aware of their well-being. But like what I started to do, it gave me the opportunity because I was with him a lot to really think about. And I get this is important for all of us. Is not a person. I'll call it a personal brand for the simplicity's sake, but a personal brand in the sense of like where outside of my career, which has these outside expectations, like what these people from this industry need or want from me, like where do I like if I were to die, like what what information do I leave behind that helps not just my child but like anybody that stumbles across that, like. And so it gave me different kinds of time, to work on different kinds of things. So learning about like the camera technologies, because that changes too. Being able to really read in depth about the sort of histories of some of the stuff that's happening. It was like different, like the time was used differently, So, but I do think that if you do it that way, then you sort of keep your career current, so you're not falling out. And in the creative industry of like sound and film, it's kind of hard to fall out if you're constantly seeking sort of a timeless, like creative output. I mean, you're not like chasing trends or anything like that. I think it's more difficult if you're somebody that's ranking at one of these like corporations. Like one of my friends, she's like the global creative director of like a major fashion brand, and like that's so amazing. I also think that probably for her, or there's probably other women that are like clawing for her job. So she, like shows weakness, who knows? Like, but and I don't know that personally, but I would imagine that there's this feeling that you could be like they would need to replace you.
Chapter 8. Dogmas. The last question is kind of like summing up a lot of things that we've been speaking about. What are the dogmas, in your opinion, about the creative industry, and what are the dogmas that we need to get rid of? Speaking from a female perspective, but also speaking from the perspective of someone that has so much experience.
Wait, so define dogma. I know my version, but I don't know if it's right.
Yeah, just like unwritten rules, like unwritten understandings of how things work.
Right. That's a really good one.
Yes.
Okay. So I think, so from a gender point of view, I think that we're actually in a really good place because you have, I'm just going to say Gen X, like, has a more modern take on, like Pete, for example, like I don't think you see men or women, like you're not like, oh, this is a female director, this is a male director, you just see like people you're like, you want to hang out with and work with, like it's a very clean sort of, and it's how I think at least my generation was raised to see like the black kids in my class, like they weren't black, they were just other kids in my class, so I think we're getting to a pretty decent place where it's like we're actually like chilling about injector stuff, And specifically what that means is like we're not automatically assuming if a woman's very emotional, like that she's crazy, you know? I don't look at young women who are emotional and think they're crazy. I'm like, women have a much more, we're starting to educate people in this, a much more complex hormonal system. And that's probably like something that needed to be taken into account many years ago, that we're not like, we're not crazy. We literally are on our periods, and that's an actual real thing. Like, we were, and even women were like, don't talk about that. Like, I'm on my period, you stop, you're sexist. But the truth is, your progesterone or estrogen are physically doing things to you that are making you behave in ways that are probably, emotional. So I think we've done a better job of understanding and educating ourselves, so like women have a little bit more clearance to be emotional, and to in the conversations that follow, if there's something that happens. I haven't had an outburst in a really long time. I'm trying to make maybe cut by it over. But I did. I used to know, like bless their hearts, like at
Yeah.
PSYOP. I hear a blast shattered all over the place. Like, there were things I did that I was like, I mean, he was so triggered by like a combination of being like a 20-year-old woman, but
Yeah.
like hormonal, but also like alcohol, substances will screw with all of that stuff. We don't tap enough about, I mean, I'm all for everybody having a drink every so often, like I'm not against that. But we don't talk enough about those like binge nights that we all go out on, and it becomes perpetual. And I've had a few really close colleagues who have really, like, really some really sad stuff, that like one of my really good friends died because, and I don't think that he was depressed. I think that he just had too much alcohol in his system. He made a bad choice,
Oh.
And I really think that that's something we need to just like be aware of in the community, that goes for men and women. But so I think that dogma of like, I think that's getting better in some ways for women. I think it's getting worse for men in a weird way.
I was just about to talk or bring up the managers that you spoke about earlier that are herding cats. And that that's a really important role, right?
Yes.
And they do need to understand that people are people, and good managers will get that, right? And yeah, they're there to look after the crew.
Absolutely.
And that there's pressure, and people can react in particular ways under pressure, and that's a really important role that I think is often forgotten to talk about as well, because it's one of the hidden roles that actually brings and kind of keeps a crew together, right? And then that person, ought to be understanding that if you're having a tough time and something's kind of emotionally coming out, that doesn't get, put into a box that's inappropriate, other than it's a box that, it's a person. Good teams will do that, right? And over time, teams get better and they know each other really well, and that should be a nice thing.
They're like specific
The unwritten rules. I think that
I mean, taking it out of gender, like the written rules, like for me, like I don't even know an answer to it really, but I liked the sound of it. And for me, like one of the things that I get really frustrated with is getting told that I'm not doing it the way that the rule book says that you should do it, right? And that for me is a really tricky, deflating moment when I get confronted with that. And it's like, I've had plenty of experiences like that coming from the UK, kind of learning my background there, and at times coming out to the States, working in really big groups, and I'll be using different terminology.
exactly.
And that terminology, I've been put into a box of he doesn't know what he's talking about. The terminology is not what we use over here. And they're not making a kind of broader distinction that, he says things in a different way because he's come from a different background of learning, and for me, I don't know that it's an answer to the question. It's just another topic of conversation that I get really frustrated with the creative rule books that you get faced. I find I get faced with all the time. And they're dated. The rule book was written and everything's moving quicker than the rule book can keep up. And there is a pretty healthy group of people within the creative industry that live off knowing the rule book better than the creatives. And I find that frustrating. I don't know how you change it. It's just a thing.
I think you just nailed it perfectly, because the people that like make the best work, like I'll look at like Robert Zemeckis, for example, when he did Back to the Future,
Yeah.
it was like a really weird script and nobody really wanted to touch. I think we just need more of those stories that it's like important, like you were saying earlier, Pete, to try to find ways to be brave and to push things. And
I think that's a really good example, right? And one thing that I noticed, I don't know if I'm right or wrong about this, but Weapons this year, did you see it?
no.
It's a movie, I absolutely loved it to bits. And I was just like, I was watching it, hearing or trying to understand how the director and producer got through the executive conversations that you normally would have faced in something like that, which always has to do with why and why and what's the motive and why and why. And then if you look at that movie and ask the questions, why is that character doing this and why da 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 da, they didn't need to answer it. And that is freaking fantastic to see, because those questions and that structure doesn't necessarily need to always be 100% sound. It can be really solid and really good terra firma to work off, but it doesn't have to be 100% the rule book every single time. And that's why I think that movie, to me, I just kind of was so drawn to it on so many levels of surprises that ordinarily I don't think would have got through a rule book studio system. And that's why I like that movie.
That's why I always rule for Barbie, because I wonder exactly the same thing. It's kind of like it's like, how did you get through that many layers of executives to tell the story you've told the story? And that's why I will always rule for Barbie as a fantastic, like a really strong message of like, we can tell a story in a different way and we can get through all those different layers of no's and make it a yes, hopefully.
To shout out to your boy, keeping the family here, Phil Racy.
Yeah.
Better man.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good example. That's actually that's a great example of how the fuck did you make that? How, I mean, and that is, it's interesting, right? And I think Michael would be one of the first to say, that it kind of fell in between a bit of a gap of two spaces. But it's also this brilliant thing where he said, actually, even to us, that it was the thing that is close. It's the greatest achievement for him because it's the closest to what was in his head.
Which is
And I love that.
Yeah.
That's absolutely amazing, right?
Yeah.
And how did you get through those conversations? It is incredible to think that Michael was able to navigate his vision for Robbie Williams being a monkey throughout, because it would have come up so many times. He is a master at, really talking well, right? He really knows how to get his idea across kind of verbally. And I'm sure he's using all the support he can visually and all that kind of stuff too. But that's another really great example of how do you weave through the rule book. The rule book should have said no to that, right? And then
But it's like should have. It's like, but it hasn't. And I think that's what.
Well, the rule
What it
book
thinks.
ordinarily would have, and should have. I'm glad it didn't, right? But ordinarily, it would have. It would have thinned out some of that kind of stuff, and I think it's exceptional, that achievement.
Chapter 9, Never Stopping.
What I was about to say about dogmas, where it's like, do you relate to the tagline "Never Stopping"? Because we use that as well, kind of that we keep trying, we keep trying, and if that resonates with you, because like just thinking about Michael and thinking about also you coming up with these really weird things, but that appear to be so appealing, is this kind of like to me, it like having those conversations on the podcast, it just encourages me so much to just try and keep trying and do it myself, like to make all those mistakes that when I get into the situation of being put in the hot seat, I know what I'm talking about, because I've done it before, and I've done the worst version of it, and I've done also so many mistakes to sit there and say like, I know how this works. I mean, I'm still waiting for that moment that I'm going to be in the hot seat, because I'm still trying.
One thing I always think of is there's this book by Paul Rand, and it's called Whatever You Think the Opposite. And it's really like, and I've used that in every single creative thing I've ever thought about, which is like when you're thinking about an idea or like something you want to do, and it seems sort of like it's not hitting yet. You're like, okay, well, what's the opposite of this, right? And usually going back to like nerdy design talk, like shape language, it's like the ankle is skinny, but what if it's skinnier? Like and just pushing it so far, like the nose is big, but what if it's bigger? Like if you always push yourself to the opposite, like that, I feel like gets you.
I'm pretty sure you've said that to me in the past as well. Like throughout, like doing some stuff. And it is really good.
Yeah, I
Just
love
as
that.
having, okay, well, what's the opposite of what I'm thinking right now?
I think that
And
should
can
be
I
the
make
title of
that
the
work?
episode.
And that's really cool. What's the opposite of what I'm thinking right
Yeah.
now? And I love that a ton. That's a really good kind of rhythm to be in at times as well. Doesn't mean it's going to be better, but it's worth having a look at and stuff. And it is kind of breaking a few norms and stuff like that.
I just wish that people would just like the best things I ever learned were things like I don't know if people need to learn software technically. Like I think it's good to know. Like the way I learned 3D, this is like crazy, but at that first job with Chris at Blind was one of my first assignments was I had to model very simply for Major League Baseball, like it was just this industrial scaffolding, right? But I didn't know how to use Maya properly. And are you familiar with instancing? So what it is like when you have a piece of geo, it has a certain amount of data, right? It's like faces and vertices and edges. And so if you have similar pieces of geo, the same pieces of geo in a scene, you want to instance it so you don't have a massive scene because the more of the copy of the thing you have, the prior the scene gets, right?
Yeah.
This is like 3D 101.
Yeah.
But I didn't know about instancing because they didn't teach you instancing. They didn't teach you how to they taught you how to open the program, right? I mean, I love my 3D teacher. He was great, but it was much more experimental. So anyway, so I'm there and I'm working on this like scaffolding and I'm like, oh, it'd be really cool if I had the nuts and bolts, right? So I start modeling these little nuts and bolts and copying and pasting. And so I make this massive scene, right, of just copying and pasting things. And suddenly it just won't move anymore. And the technical director, who ended up becoming the technical director at ILM, I was like, I know what's wrong with my computer. I mean, he looks at my scene, he's like, holy shit, you maxed out your poly count. And he could see on the top.
Maxed out your poly count.
So your poly count, like he's screaming this. He thinks it's hilarious. He takes like a photo. He's calling everybody over. He's like, look what Laura did. She maxed out her poly count. He's like, how did you even do that? Like, what did you do? Like, how did you do this? And I must have copied and pasted so many times. And it was like literally the way Maya had it at the time was like, there is no zero, it like cuts in half.
Yeah.
The program just splits. So like my employer, Chris, was like, this is so not cool, dude. But the problem, the reason why it wasn't cool was because what had happened was because along the way, the thing wouldn't even render, right? I was just able to sort of get what is called the occlusion pass, which is just sort of how light passes through a scene. So the shot was really cool looking because you had this really dense shadowing.
Oh, using only an occlusion pass is the best looking.
Oh, it's so cool, right?
It looks freaking fantastic.
It's so cool, yeah.
I used to insist that character presentations were only an occlusion pass.
It's actually still the best idea.
It looks so good. But there's an example of trying to convince bigger groups that have done it before their way. Trying to convince groups to do that was so impossible. You're like, but it's the easiest thing to do. And it looks 10 times better. And we're going to get approved.
Just as
And then, no, we always do it this way. And you're like, well, okay, damn it.
For anyone who doesn't understand what the fuck they're talking about, I don't understand what the fuck they're talking about either.
Yeah, it was a good example of like just how like it ended up looking so cool as described. And I think anybody like if people do understand what occlusion has, they'll totally agree that it's like the coolest. This video is a soft white with like a nice soft dark gray shadows. Like,
and if you present the idea, that you're going to do a whole spot as that occlusion pass, trying to convince people to do it is so tough. But it would just be great.
I mean, but now as Keith Cannelan, do you feel like you have more flexibility to convince people, or is it still?
No.
No.
I think that I'm there for sure. I've known the battles that I can give up now that aren't really a big part of the entire thing too. But it's like it's tricky, right? I mean, there's a greater amount of people that have made successful things through the rule book. So that's the gravity of how you do it. That's the pulling power of how you do it. And and when you do get told the rule book back to you, I get frustrated with it, but I don't get upset anymore, and I don't kind of throw a glass on the ground and stuff.
Really, I find that the way that I certainly have done,
Which I mean, I can relate because you, as a artist trying to do stuff, you're under huge amounts of pressure, and you want people to understand. And you haven't seen it, but I do. I'll lose it, but I use it like punctuation. The exclamation mark comes across a little bit bigger when I do it, maybe. But
But I think also just talking to that point as someone that isn't working in, I'm not working in my field for such a long time. I'm starting to grow up. I think you also have to grow up into that position where you're just like, okay, I know exactly what I'm doing, and I need you to listen to me. And if you say no, that's fine. But like, just for the people out there that are more in the starting point of their careers, it's like, you like that's something that I think I should share, because someone that I kind of work with, he told me that in his company, the bosses, they or young people always get very frustrated when they deliver something to the boss in sound design context, and the boss changes it, but the boss doesn't tell you you made a mistake or anything. He just molds it to the place where it needs to be, and then young people get frustrated that what they've delivered is completely something else that at the end is the result. And I think that's absolutely wrong to do, because if someone is not screaming at you for doing something completely different than what's expected of you, is a fucking winner. It's a lottery ticket. And just to have the opportunity to try things out and give it to your boss and then get feedback, for example, I told that person I would die to have that job, And I think like young people also, sometimes when I think of myself as well, I just push too heavy. Like, I was probably like you. People would told me like, you need to stop, you need to slow down. I'm just like maybe do you go a bit faster? I don't know. And it was a big fight oftentimes because I thought I knew it better than everyone. And like, maybe sometimes I did, but at the end of the day, it's like, if you're able to try out things and no one screams at you for doing that and be brave, I think that's what you should aim to find as well in a job.
yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Good.
I wish people tried out more things. Like I've been, I hope it's in a polarizing extreme thing, but I either see younger designers who are doing exactly what I used to do. So they're just chasing the dragon. They're just going for it. Like I did this project with the friends of mine that they were also my client. Dave and Earring is a jewelry company, but they felt very they wanted to be mentors to younger students, and they did that through this relationship they had with Scab, which is a design school on the East Coast. And I was tasked while I was helping consult with their brand with helping some of these young kids while they were working on this project for them. And these are some of the it can be really frustrating when you're at a point in your career where you're like, oh, like, why are you doing it that way? But they were they were trying like so hard, and they were doing it in such interesting, distinct ways. And we just need to encourage that. And just, it doesn't matter if they're doing it the way I told them to. I don't want them to do it the way I told them to. I want them to figure it out in their way.
I think that's 100% it, is having the ability to learn it. And I would have said something like, don't get taught the rule book or the rules, but learn them. Because when you're taught, you're not necessarily engaging your brain in a way. You're not inquiring about it, and you're not learning why it is like that. You're just learning that they're the rules. And I don't mean I've got to figure out something other than rules and rule book. But you get what I mean. But if you learn them and you understand them in such a fundamental way, that's when you know how to use them or not. And it's how you can kind of circumnavigate them at the right times and how they become a part of your own process.
Mm-hmm.
You still learn it, but getting taught it sometimes restricts you down a much more narrow path.
But I think that's exactly the problem, I think, with like that we have with AI, because the AI only gives you the rule book because all it feeds off is all the information out there saying this is how you should be doing it.
Mhm.
And as a sound person, I can also tell people, like, I think that's the number, but I would say like 85% of the YouTube videos out there about sound design tell you things are incorrect, and you think they're correct because someone says that, then you do it that way. And if you stick, and if you were to translate a YouTube video into AI and then you stick to this one idea in your workflow, you will make it always wrong, instead of questioning, is that really the right thing that I'm doing here, or is that just someone has done it and now I'm doing it the same way? So I think AI is also kind of like the rule book, that if you don't learn yourself and stick only to the rule book, you will never like question if that's the right thing that I'm doing. And I mean, now we're tapping into like kind of Hannah Arendt's kind of human condition
I feel like we could have like
dialogue.
The cool thing about these new tools is that they just enable, like, you could do it the right way or you could do it the wrong. Like, the best photography has like really strange, choices in ISO or, exposure or shutter speed, and like, the most boring photography does everything by the rule book. So we just need to all have our, ISO set to 64,000, and
and boom.
it's really high. You wouldn't want a 64. That would make it just a noise. We just be in surrounded
Right.
areas.
I'm gonna have to
Get to the lake.
go to the loo. Yeah.
Fine.
Do you want to sign off and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I don't
I'm just
know
gonna
if we do, like,
squeeze out and then what's that?
Official.
This bit we make this bit loud.
I don't know how, like, we never officially.
I was like, I don't know, maybe I should just move.
Okay, how do we finish this off professionally? Thank you, Lauren, for sharing all those great thoughts about your world. But I think like there needs to be more parts to this, because it's a really nice conversation to have.
Yeah, we'll have an ongoing series. But thank you, and I'm super excited for you guys to do this.